Welcome back to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, continuing my conversation with author Marti Konstant. Thank you for staying with me.
Oh, sure.
So before we went to break, we were talking about the A/B test your career, and I just wanted to get back to that, and then we'll continue to go through those principles.
Right. So there's nothing saying that we can't go back to a type of role that we had 5 years ago if it suits us better. So an A/B testing in that way to measure it. Do I like job A better or do I like job B? And it's really A through Z depending on how many roles that you have. But you can do these in sequence and look back and measure, but you can also do them in parallel. There's a lot of people in the gig economy and the freelance economy right now where they're doing things on the side. I know I did quite a bit of freelance work in marketing on the side, even when I was a chief marketer at a tech company.
You just said something that kind of gave me reason to pause about the gig economy. I know that's kind of a big thing right now.
Yes, it is.
Yes, that's
it
really,
is.
Do you want to share a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, you know, the gig economy is a summary statement that means a lot of things to different people. I think of it as something that is all things that one does on the side. It's everything from an Uber or Lyft driver to doing freelance work from your profession. It might be in finance, it might be in marketing, and there's lots of exchanges where you can get work on the side. Even doing tasks, like a place like TaskRabbit, you can sign up for those things. That's all part of the gig economy.
Yeah, it's really big. I hear so many people talking about that now, so especially our younger folks.
Yes, and generally, there, you know, a lot of the roles are lesser paid on the side, but there's actually a segment of gig economy workers that are very highly paid. They're savvy consultants is what they are on the side.
Consultants, All right, so back to the principles. So I think we are activate the feedback squad.
Right. We were activate the feedback squad, but we were also talking about the parallel pursuits.
The parallel pursuit, that's right.
So if you're doing something on the side, you could be doing everything from an extra job to pursuing a hobby to getting education. And that's why the parallel pursuits means a lot of things. Why would one want to pursue a hobby? Well, it makes you a little bit more interesting in your workplace if you're pursuing things outside and you bring that into your workplace. You can also just get trained on the latest in your industry or in your technology by doing things on the side.
Right. What about now the activate the feedback spot?
So I, in doing the interviews, Kim, with the people that I interviewed, 80% of them that I interviewed got the job that they could get when they graduated from whatever, and 80% of them, when I asked the question, who here has ever had a formal mentor? About 20% raised their hands. What we found out from that is a lot of mentoring is done informally. There's nothing wrong with that, but some people are waiting to be adopted by that perfect mentor. I never was adopted by the perfect mentor. So activating a feedback squad can be a reverse mentoring situation. Years ago, I hired a young person that knew a lot about blogging, and she taught me everything about blogging that I didn't know, and of course I trained her for the role. Yeah, so we had a reverse mentoring situation there. So that kind of thing, that's a type of feedback. You can have situational feedback where you've got a problem, and you know that John or Barry have been through this. You can set up an appointment with them and talk with them and ask how business is done and get some advice and guidance.
Yeah, both of those are very important to have. I know mentoring for sure is something that's really, we speak a lot about that at the Career Center with our clients, so very good. And then are we with, what are we, a personal brand?
We're on the optimization of the personal brand. It's never been as important as it is today to really develop your personal brand. Some people might say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that, you know, I have my own colors and I dress a certain way? What does personal branding mean? The most important part of personal branding is being known for one thing better than anyone else. In other words,
say that again.
One thing
right.
than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So then if you can do 25 things, we all can. But guess what? No one's going to know you in your organization or your industry of those 25 things. But if you become expert at one thing, they will get to know you, and then you'll get to do all of those other things.
Right.
There's a thing called Sheehan's wall. And if you do too many things, you hit a wall, and like a boomerang, it all comes back to you. Whereas if you narrow, you break through that wall, and then you expand.
When you're talking about this particular principle, do most people get it? Because I think it's so critical.
I think people get the segment that they're most interested in. If they're interested in updating their LinkedIn profile, that is branding to them. If they're interested in understanding what are my values and how do I want to be aligned with them in the workplace, that's another deeper type of branding. Another one is, I mentioned, what do I wear? How do I look? How do I present myself in the marketplace? It means all of those things.
Right, right. All right, well, that was great on the principles, so thanks for kind of giving us an overview on that. I now want to talk about just 3 scenarios in that mid-careerist time of change.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think one of them was, say you've been overlooked. And you've been working so hard, and you expected that promotion, you didn't get it. You have 2 options. You can just figure out how to navigate artfully into something else within the organization that has more opportunity for you, or you can just start networking on the outside for another role. I mentioned, I think earlier, a young gentleman named Anthony Ponce, who used to work for Network News, and he was passed over for a role. I think it was about 3.5, 4 years ago in big network news. And he decided to work with Lyft on the side and be a roving podcaster, disseminating those interesting stories in the form of a podcast. And of course, we all know what happens. He was picked up by another network with the role he really wanted. So that's an example of being, passed over for something that you could definitely do something else.
Right, and not fitting in the mold, and you just kind of check all the boxes there.
Right, and one of the things that happens a lot is when people are being interviewed, it's frustrating because the interviewer might have their check boxes.
A list of questions.
Yeah, and it might be a millennial interviewing a later stage worker, checking off the boxes and not getting deep into what this person is truly capable of. And what I would say there is to make certain that you have the types of questions that can get that out in the interview. Don't necessarily wait for that checkbox.
So when it's time for you to now ask the questions, make sure you do that.
Right, because that's the only way you will get your competencies and capabilities and your high value that you bring to the equation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we hear a lot about at the center is, I think you refer to them as our later generation. Or
later stage workers. Yeah, or second half of life workers.
Yeah, I like both of those. But they often feel overlooked. They often feel that, the younger generation is getting the jobs and all of that. So that's another one of your things that you had mentioned. Right,
and the way to combat that is really to optimize your emotional intelligence. So we've got digital DQ and EQ. We've got emotional intelligence and digital intelligence. A young person in the market is going to know the digital part of the equation, but they might not have access to observing patterns, to really understanding how to problem solve in a certain way. What's great about that is if those 2 workers can blend together, really powerful problem solving can happen in the workplace.
Okay, so now I want to know a little bit about what you're working on now.
Yeah, so what I'm working on now is I wrote the book called Activate Your Agile Career to better understand the individual. I wanted to make certain that no one was left behind and then that they had control of their career. And in that process, I understood that It's two parts to the equation. And so now I'm working on a project called Happy, Profitable Employees. And that's really from the perspective of the employer and also the perspective of the individual. Everybody should be profitable.
Right.
It's not just one or the other.
Right.
And it takes, similar to how the millennial and the boomer may work together,
Right.
it's really important for the worker and the employee, to be working with the organization. It takes a blend of understanding and working together to make it all work.
So how many subjects are you going to interview through this process, and what are you learning as you go through this?
Yeah, I started the process already. I'm interviewing everybody in the ecosystem of this. So the ecosystem of career development would be everything from career coaches, professional development, HR directors, culture management, CEOs that care about having a really healthy culture that's diverse and inclusive of many things that are important.
Very good. I can't wait for that to come out. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me now, how do we find you? Because I know you are out there and you're doing a lot of presentations and workshops. How do people find you?
How I can be found is at agilecareer.com. It's a website. And on that website, you can do two things. You can sign up for my 52 ideas. It's a new idea every week, delivered to you via email.
52 ideas.
52 ideas. And the other thing is you can sign up for a complimentary career agility guide. It's a 22-page guide that introduces people to the career agility model included in the book, as well as some of these principles that we were discussing and examples.
And I would assume there's also other social media mediums where they can find you.
Exactly. There's on Twitter. There's at Marti Konstant, MartiKonstant, and then a very active visual social media platform that I've been working with lately is Instagram.
How's that working for you?
It's working very well. I was able to really connect with a lot of people from the ecosystem I was talking about through there, and getting speaking engagements on the topic as well.
Very good. And so just as we wrap up, when I ask how to pronounce your last name, it's Constant, and then what do you always say?
I always say it never changes, but you do start with a K.
You do start with a K. That is so awesome. Marti, thank you so much. I'm so glad you chose to spend today with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And also, thank you for watching on this month's edition of Career Center. And to our television audience, if you're in job transition or looking for professional career advice, visit the Community Career Center at 1815 West Dill Road, Suite 900, or search us on the web at communitycareercenter.org. Thanks so much for watching.